The two friendly games are imminent for England, of course. We know the 33 players that are in this provisional squad. We've talked about who we would cut down or who we would cut from the squad to 26 players. We talked about it last week. Something that I want to talk about this week is Southgate's in-game management. Substitutions. Now, Southgate has been criticised over his tenure as England manager, and substitutions are utterly crucial. We often talk about who would you start? Who's your starting 11? As if that's the end of the conversation. Well, of course, that's not. That's just the start of the conversation. Now, here's some stats for you. England have made the first substitution in only 4 of 19 major tournament games. Now, I understand they've gone far under Southgate, but they haven't won it. And when it's come to the crunch, obviously England have been left wanting on those occasions. So just 4 times in 19 major tournaments, Southgate's made the first move. He's only ever made 5 subs before the hour mark. 3 of those were in group games, and the other was when they were 3-0 up against Ukraine in Euro 2020 in that quarter-final in Rome. So he's quite hesitant to make substitutions in the big games. Against Brazil in March, in the friendlies, fans were a bit annoyed. He took off Bellingham, brought on Bowen, Duncan Gomez. That's less of an issue, I would say. But the fact is that his substitutions have been scrutinised as well. He was criticised for bringing on Sancho and Rashford, of course, near the end of the Euro 2020 final, specifically for the penalty shootout. People thought maybe you should have given them a little bit more time on the pitch. Whatever you may think, he's ultimately been criticised for this. And I think this is a justified criticism. I am a Southgate apologist and defender, but I do get this. Luke Moore.
It's a lot to unpack there, really.
Yes.
And I think what it has been a conversational hot potato among certain sections of the media across like traditional media, broadsheet media. Everyone's talked about it. I saw there was a column in one of the quality newspapers maybe last month about it. It screamed to me of, just give us 500 words on England during the international break, please, will you? But I do understand that it's a conversation that fans are having as well, and you know, so I totally get the topic. But as I said, there's a lot to unpack, and I think what's going to be helpful here is to drill down into some of the detail on what we're talking about. And that is that ultimately, Gareth Southgate's record for England is good. I think it's important to preface anything we're about to say about the England team when we talk about that, because I think he's unified the team. Previous managers have not been that good at doing that, or indeed at performances in tournaments, etc., etc. So it's important to understand that overall his performance as manager has been good, right? His average first substitution timing is on 65 minutes. If you average them all out across all the different types of games, it comes in at about 65 minutes. But I think the detail's important, as I keep saying, because I believe strongly that actually we should disregard friendlies. Right, there can be many different reasons why subs are made or not made. Friendlies are there for different reasons. I don't think against Brazil in March, when he took off Bellingham and 2 others, I forget who the other 2 were, and brought on Jarrod Bowen, Lewis Duncan and Joe Gomez, as you said, is really here nor there. I mean, these are friendly games. You're trying things out. You don't know what they've been working at in the camp. You don't know what they've been looking to try. We don't really know the reasons for those. And then we also probably need to factor in the fact that England have won 57 of the 93 games he's managed, and they've drawn 21. The entire argument seems to tend to boil down to the fact that Southgate could make some subs a bit earlier in some games some of the time, which for me is looking for patterns that aren't necessarily there. And when the sample size is ultimately games that really matter, those games are quite rare, because no one is complaining about England's record in qualifying. Bar one real anomaly, England, even if people care about the Nations League, which I guess for the purposes of this show they probably do, they had one poor Nations League campaign. They've also had a good one. When we come down to criticising the things England under Southgate do and don't do, it's a very small sample size of games. And each game has to be taken on its merits, and each plan has to be reworked when it comes into content with reality, because anything can happen in the football match, especially a big knockout game. So I don't think the solution is as simple as just throwing forwards on like Hodgson did that time against Iceland, when we ended up with like 4 forwards on the pitch and it was all a bit incoherent. So in summary, the devil's in the detail. You've got to take each game on its merits. The sample size is small. And I'll end by saying, against Scotland in Euro 2020, he made the first subs before Scotland did. Against USA in World Cup 2022, he's also the first to move before the USA did. Those games were both stinkers. Both ended up as horrendous, 0-0s or whatever. But he did do it. I mean, he did try and do something. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, even in some other games, we're talking about the Archie games, he's still doing things. So, I don't necessarily subscribe to it, I guess is what I'm saying.
Okay, it's interesting point. So, the two games that I would scrutinise over this are the two games that really are the ones that matter the most. Quarter-final against France in the last World Cup, the final of the last Euros. Now, against France in World Cup 2022, England had that period, didn't they, after Kane had equalised, and then England were on top for about a 10-minute spell or whatever it was, and France wobbled. I remember a few passes here and there they couldn't put together, and England looked like that they were going to take the game by the scruff of the neck. So I suppose to make a sub then, do you stick or twist? Well, you've got a side who are on top. If he makes a sub and it doesn't quite work out, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. France then kind of calmed down and then obviously got the winning goal. Southgate then started to make subs after France go 2-0 up. He takes off Henderson and Bukayo Saka and puts on Mason Mount, Raheem Sterling.
2-1 up, you mean?
2-1 up, sorry, yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. So I can kind of understand
that game. There was nothing. Mark, sorry to cut in.
Yeah.
But genuinely, that is a perfect summation of what happened.
Yeah.
France probably had the best of the first half. England get a penalty just after half time and equalise, and then for about 20 minutes we're really good. And then France score. England then battle back and get a penalty and miss it.
Yeah.
And the substitutions are all made around that penalty, a couple before, one after, whatever.
Well, Mason Mount, one of the subs, wins the penalty. Yeah.
Exactly.
So there's that game. So I'll put that one to one side. I still think that people are jaded by that Euros final against Italy.
We're going back 3 years, though. We have to say that.
Indeed. But I think that's what people are jaded by, and I think that if Southgate doesn't win a tournament, this will be his defining legacy with some people for England. And I think that's unfair. I'm not one of those people, but I still think people are jaded by that final, when quite clearly, even in the first half, Italy had wrestled control. And it suddenly, watching the match, as we all did, it became obvious to me that Italy were going to have control of the ball and England were going to be defending deep, and could they hang on? That was how the game started to play out. And Italy equalise in the 67th minute. It's not like, it was just an injury time or a couple of minutes to go. Italy equalised when there's a lot of the game still to play. Southgate started making changes 4 minutes after Italy had equalised. And I think this game is still what a lot of people judge Southgate on, especially with subs, that he was slow to react against Italy when quite clearly he didn't know. He was a bit like, at the moment we're not conceding. Let's just hang on in there. Whereas I thought a positive change needed to be made. He changed the formation a little bit when Saka and Co came on from a 3-4-3 to 4-3-3. But ultimately, the game then became a bit of a stalemate and it was uninspiring. And I think that is still what people... That is the stick people still used to beat Southgate with, among other reasons. I think it's slightly unfair. The subs, maybe I'm a bit more... I kind of get that one a bit more, but I still think it's that game.
Yeah, and I think I'd probably, if I was just going to play devil's advocate to my own point, because I'm not saying that it's completely invalid or incorrect to criticise him for this. I'm just saying that the sample size is really across a large period of his tenure. It's a small amount of games. And maybe people would come back and say, well, that's when it matters, right? You've got to get these calls right. I totally understand that. But I would also add probably the Croatia semi-final in World Cup 2018 to that. It became clear pretty early on that England were losing the momentum of that and people were tired and there wasn't as much. He didn't really do an awful lot to affect the game, and I didn't have any real confidence they were going to wrestle it back, particularly in extra time. But it's easy to be wise after the event. I think he's naturally a conservative-ish guy when it comes to football. I think that's something that we can say it's been established. But he can't... What I really want to guard against to people listening to this is the idea, like I mentioned earlier, this assumption that you can somehow just chuck a load of attacking players on and it's going to make it better. That's not what it's all about. And you have to think about the patterns of play. You have to think about the relationships between, for example, wide forwards who are really important in the modern game, and fullbacks, for example, when it comes to attacking. You have to think of the relationships between those two kind of areas. And I would also say that, I've mentioned this in the past, but not for a while, is that England do actually have now the ability in terms of the personnel they've got to present different challenges for defenders, opposition defenders, in those key wide forward areas.
Would you want to name some names and see what would you fancy?
Well, what I'm saying is that I'm not necessarily want to be too specific. But what I am going to say is, as an example, we talked about the forward attacking players that should be a part of this squad and should feature. One of the criticisms that Southgate's had levelled at him is that he didn't bring a really in-form Jack Grealish on against France until like the 97th minute or something ridiculous. Yeah. So look, I get that. That's probably something that, with hindsight, should have been better. He didn't bring Mount or Sterling on till the 80th minute, whatever it was, and he didn't bring Rashford on till 85th minute. So I totally get all that. My point is just that I suppose I do share the criticism of the fact that if you are, for example, going to start a game with Anthony Gordon, right, off the left, and it's not really working for him, or he's not really getting any joy because the right fullback he's playing up against have got his number, you are capable of bringing a Jack Grealish on who presents a completely different challenge. We see Man City do it all the time with Doku. Right, Doku's a completely different type of player to anything else they've got. He's super positive. He commits defenders in a way that kind of Grealish sort of used to, but in a quicker way. My point is just that maybe he could use the different profile of attacking players we have in those wide areas to present different challenges for the opposition. And my criticism would be that he doesn't really do that enough because he's a bit of a kind of what we have, we hold type manager. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. I agree with you. I think if I am going to name a few names, I think England do have players that come off the bench. There's no doubt about that. We don't know who's going to be in the 26, so we might start talking about some individuals who then don't make it, so you don't want to go too heavy on this. But when, as you say, Grealish will be, I think he'll go. There is a doubt over that due to his form and other stuff this season. But again, you've mentioned him off the bench. If Anthony Gordon doesn't start, again, a good player to bring off the bench. I'd be amazed if he doesn't go to the tournament. We've talked about Eberechi Eze. James Maddison's been used off the bench a little bit sparingly. But I think in Trent Alexander-Arnold, who I would very much expect to go to the tournament, I think that gives England another option in midfield. If England are a little bit hemmed in, they're playing, say, I don't know, a side who can keep the ball better than England, say a Spain or something, and they're being pushed, to have Trent in there, to you remember when he linked against North Macedonia with Saka so effectively. And I know that opposition is not as strong as say Spain or something, but those kind of out balls, spraying the balls out to the wing and so on. Trent's got more in his locker than that, I understand, but that's a player who I think could come on and change the dynamic completely as well for England. So I think that that Southgate is obviously keenly and acutely aware of these things. But one of the other things, though, that I think could happen in game is I've talked about the midfield three who I would start for the big games, as I've mentioned before, which would be Rice, Mainoo and Bellingham in the centre, and I would have Foden out on the left. But if England are chasing a game, we saw this against Belgium in the friendly. Yeah, there is a danger of leaving the back door open. But if you're down a goal or two in a knockout game, for example, and you need to win, then you've got to do it. You can't wait around and hope for the best. So I think what he could do in game is you then push everybody forward. So you take off, say, Mainoo, if indeed that's going on the proviso that he starts there. You bring Foden inside. You make Bellingham play slightly deeper, but with a license to roam. You say, "Sorry, Declan, you're going to have a lot of work to do if they break." And then you bring on somebody on the left wing, whether it be, I don't know, Anthony Gordon or somebody like that. So you could go sort of more ultra attacking, try and swarm teams. Because they did that against Belgium. I really was encouraged by that, the way England had the ball and swarmed them. I wasn't encouraged by the mistakes that happened at the back, but individual mistakes you'd hope would be ironed out. And Lewis Dunk was at fault. One of them, I'm not sure he'll go. Harsh to pick him out, but he did it. So I think there are options there. You could even start talking about, would he revert to say a 3-4-3 at some points? You could bring on Alexander-Arnold, right wing back, Carl Walker in there. Trippier up to left wing back, Bellingham in the middle with Rice.
There's loads of options.
There are options there, and I think that's the exciting thing about this England team. Some people will think Southgate's not going to do this. I don't know. I think we are seeing. People have said we've seen more ruthless side of Southgate in terms of his selections. I wouldn't be surprised if he threw just a tiny bit more caution to the wind, if indeed the situation called for it.
You talked about England being in that game against Italy in the Euros final. If they'd gone 2-0 down after 35 minutes like France did, what would Southgate have done? I actually think he probably would have changed it. I don't think I'm not. I don't think of Southgate as standing there totally paralysed in this admittedly entirely fictional situation I've described in my own mind. In my mind, he does do stuff, and I think it speaks to the very heart of what it is to be a manager in these high stakes international tournaments. It's very, very difficult to know when to push the button, because there is a temptation, not just from Southgate, but for a lot of coaches at international level, to be like, look, what we have, we hold. Fine, we're not blowing a team away like we did 2 weeks ago, whatever, but we're also not losing the game, or we're not out of touch. Like, I trust the players I've chosen. I trust the players I've worked with all week and all month, and I think they can do something here, and I'm not going to rip it all up and start again at the first sign of a momentum shift or something going wrong. I do think that, extreme situations call for extreme measures. I just don't know if Southgate has been faced with that exact extreme situation with England. So we haven't seen it yet, probably because of that. But in summary, if he was faced with that situation Deschamps' France were faced with in a World Cup final, I think he probably would have done a similar thing because he'd have had to.
Interesting. All right, now it's time for the return of the Take Thermometer.
Yes, indeed. Every week on Lions Watch, we sense check the latest big opinions on the Take Thermometer. I presume you would have listened to all the earlier episodes of Lions Watch by now, but if you haven't, just very, very quickly, it's pretty self-explanatory. Is something a pundit, player or coach has said regarding the England men's team spot on, or a load of old chutney? And our scale this season has been lemon and herb, mild, medium, hot, and flare up the arse. It's inspired by Nando's and the bloke who shoved a flare up his arse on Wembley Way. So far,
not
there
Leicester
hasn't been.
Square.
Was it Leicester Square? I thought it was on Wembley Way.
I think it was Leicester Square.
Could be more than one. We'll see this summer. I'm sure there'll be some people looking to replicate the act. So far, there's not been a tie-in between Nando's, the Ramble, and the bloke with the flare up the arse for a special menu, but we do have our fingers crossed. This time around, step up, the bird shit man himself. It's Ashley Young, and he says the following: Jared Branthwaite should start for England. That's the headline. Young, who plays with Branthwaite at Everton, of course, says that Jared Branthwaite is good enough to play in the Champions League, and he has been a big part of a defensive line that's kept 12 clean sheets for Everton this season. Young went on to say the following: He's definitely a player that can play in the Champions League and big tournaments. For me, he could start for England, definitely. I'd be confident enough to say start him. If he's going to be called upon, he'd fit straight in there. He doesn't take any prisoners. He wants to play football. He can tackle, he can head it, and he can come up with the goal as well. He's got all the great attributes to be a centre-half for many, many years. I like that he wants to play football. I'm pleased that Ashley reiterated that for us, because it's key, I think, for a professional footballer that you want to play football. Marcus, I come to you for the first response.
Yeah. It's funny because we had him down as one of the names that we think will be cut from the squad. So on the basis of that, I suppose I should say lemon and herb, but I'm not going to say lemon and herb. He's very highly rated. And if Southgate sees something in training and thinks, he's a left-footed centre-half, which is quite nice. England at centre-half have had issues in the past. Who's going to partner Stones? Maguire is the obvious one, and I think that's what we'll go with. I think that's probably what he should go with, despite Maguire's injuries. Presumably, he'll be fine. Mark Gay has injuries all season, and he's really the third choice centre back under Southgate. Has been since fairly recently. So, despite being one of the players we think will be cut from the 26-man squad when it's whittled down, I think that this isn't a terrible take at all. I'm going to say a medium take, and the reason for that is he is very highly rated. He's one of the players that we get comments about a lot during this show, saying he should definitely be in the squad. So a lot of people like him. If Southgate chooses to take him to the Euros, I wouldn't be shocked or disappointed. I'd be slightly surprised, because I think he will be one of the names that's cut. If he then makes his way into the starting lineup, I think to myself, surely he's seen something in training and his performances. And also, that spot next to Stones, it's not up for grabs in a traditional way, because I think Maguire has the shirt there. If Branthwaite was to usurp Maguire, I think that I don't think I would be too disappointed or worried. I think, Southgate's seen something here. And I would be maybe slightly more excited. We haven't had that yet, so I don't think he'll go to the Euros. But like I say, if he did, I wouldn't be disappointed. So And I think he will start for England in future. He's that highly rated. So I have to go fairly on the fence with this, sadly. But I think it's a medium take.
Yeah, so England obviously play Bosnia on Monday and then Iceland on Friday. And it wouldn't be a huge surprise to see him feature. I think that the working out we did a week or two ago on why we think he might be cut from the 33 is there for people to listen to. Perhaps we've been a little bit dismissive in overlooking him, but my take on that would just be that, as I've said many times before about many different players, I've said it about Adam Wharton, I've said it about Kobbie Mainoo, in fact, who we're going to come on to. And I'm happy to kind of say it about Jarrad Branthwaite as well, is that they're young, right? And there's no actual real purpose to accelerating them quicker than they need to, just because some people are excited about them, or Everton are a big club and he's played for them all season and they've done well defensively. I mean, so I try and urge caution on that. Having said that, if Maguire has a recurrence of an injury or isn't quite at it, and Luke Shaw doesn't make it, which means there's a reshuffle, and there's one or two others breakdown training or whatever, well then he's going to go anyway, because he's in the 33, and then we'll see. And as I've said to you before, that's how legends are forged, right? Maguire came into World Cup 2018 with hardly any experience at all, right? And at international level, and he's been there or thereabouts ever since. I think Branthwaite's got a massive future. I like the partnership he's forged with James Tarkowski as a kind of really nice blend of Danny Glover and Mel Gibson about it. One of them's 31, the other one's 21. You've got a nice blend of youth and experience there, which you could probably replicate with him and maybe with him and Maguire, even if Stones doesn't make it, because he's not been without his injuries, right? I think he anticipates really well. He's absolutely massive, which is pleasing. He can intercept. I actually think he passes pretty well as well. I saw a few people criticising him for that a while back. I actually think his pass completion stands up with anyone at Everton, pretty much. United want him. They'll probably pay loads for him, won't they, in the summer? And they'll pay even more if he plays in the Euros. So look, I get it, and I also get that Ashley Young has been about a bit, has seen a lot of players come and go, and has played with him all season and likes him. I think that's fair enough, and it's nice for him to advocate for one of his teammates who's younger and all that good stuff. So, I'm actually going to say, it's a hot take. I'm actually going to say I quite like the take.
Flare up the arse or hot?
No, just hot. I think.
Okay.
I was kind of arm and an in between medium and hot. I'm going for hot because you went medium. I would be tremendously excited if Branthwaite was to start and had to start, and then had two friendlies where he was really good, eased his way into the group stage and started playing really well. He doesn't seem like the kind of character to let it phase him either. So I think we have seen this kind of stuff happen in the past. It would be great. If not, it's a win-win for all England fans anyway, because of no doubt at all that whether he moves to United or someone else, or whether he stays at Everton in the Premier League, people are going to notice him more and more. He's going to start to become a part of England squads in the future. If you look at Kyle Walker's 34, I know he's a right back, but ultimately there are an older generation of defensive players in this England squad. Even Lewis Dunk, who's hardly played, is 32. John Stones is north of 30. Harry Maguire's 31. So there's an opportunity there, I think, and so I actually think it's a pretty good take. It's a ahead of your time take by Ashley Young. I'm officially deeming it hot.
How about that? Well done, Ashley Young. Of course, played for England in 2018 World Cup under Gareth Southgate. So not too surprising that we've got a bit of level-headedness there, finally.
Didn't he also play in the hole for Hodgson at Euro 2012?
No. Oh, sorry. I thought you meant holding midfield.
No, Young.
No, you're right. Yeah, he played for England and Hodgson. You're absolutely right. And at times, occupied that role, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
He was a fine footballer. People might forget that about Ashley Young. Maybe they don't.
I don't forget it. He's had a great career.
No, indeed. Right, now it's time for some of your questions. Do remember, you can send us your England questions at any time of the day. Our email inbox is open, show@footballramble.com.
Do it at 4 a.m, see if we read it.
Indeed. You can tweet us on X at Football Ramble as well. Again, X is open 24 hours a day. Okay?
Yeah, the Musketeer has ensured it.
Exactly.
One of the things that people don't remember is actually before the Musketeer took over at X, formerly known as Twitter.
Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, wasn't it?
No, it was actually Sunday opening now. It was 10 till 4. It's the only time you could use it. So that's good on the Musketeer for getting people working a bit harder and getting it open at all hours.
He's done us all a solid there. Right, First question from David in Good Air, or Buenos Aires as we like to call it.
Good Air.
Now David asks this question. Presumably,
I wonder how this got in here. I wonder how this one got in first up. Look at Marcus's face. If you watch on the socials, look at his face.
presumably this is to you, Luke. Did Kobbie Mainoo's FA Cup final performance cement his starting place for England?
Never heard of him.
Yes, it did, David.
It's a
yes,
good question.
It did.
So, now it's important for me to eat a load of shit when I have to.
And humble pie.
Yeah, humble pie and whatever you want to call it.
You regularly serves humble pie these days.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
And that's just at home.
Yeah.
But look, joking aside, my criticism, it wasn't even really a criticism. It was like, based on what I said earlier around Branthwaite as well. It's early, we can be excited, and it's fine to be excited, but we can't see a young midfield player who's playing in an absolute basket case of a club to be the panacea to all of our problems. I still believe that to be the case, but what I did ask for is for people to give me an example of a high-profile game against a good team where Mainoo's been able to control things from midfield. Well, we've now seen that, right? The situation has changed. He was fantastic in the cup final against a brilliant team, possibly the best club side we've ever seen in this country. And so, therefore, he needs to be given credit for that. And it's not that I didn't see that. It's not that I didn't think he was capable of that. It's just that we didn't see that individually or specifically. So now we have seen that. Great, fucking get him in. I'm all for it. And if I've offended anyone who likes Kobbie Mainoo, I can only apologise.
Apology accepted.
And I will make a donation to the Royal Society for the Underrated Holding Midfield Players Association, and hopefully the whole thing can be forgotten about.
Yeah. That'll take longer than what you want, but
if England play Slovenia in that watch along and Kobbie Mainoo scores a hat trick and it's amazing, will you permit me to celebrate?
I will permit you to address the crowd.
Thanks.
Yeah, we'll get a sound system rigged up just for that.
I haven't actually been on the
eventuality.
Ramble since the cup final, and I would say this: I thought he was absolutely sensational.
I think as well, though, that
amazing.
He's not really the holding midfield player that people might think he is. Actually, I said on Monday that he kind of does a bit of what Declan Rice does at Arsenal. He could be shuttling forward, all that kind of stuff. But his play.
But isn't that just modern midfielders? I mean,
yeah, probably.
The two type of holding midfielders you get are like a Rodri type, metronomic, a Jorginho as well, and then you have a player like that. He ultimately is ostensibly a holding midfield player. It's just because he's so athletic and he's intelligent, he's able to break forward at the right times, and that's really how Rice started. And we've just seen Rice do it more and more.
He's got a lovely change of pace and that low centre of gravity as well, where he just shuffles so beautifully. But he's such a lovely player to watch, and I think in tight spaces he's so calm. I said this on Monday, that he's even really, really calm and assured in interviews as well. Like, he just looks like he belongs. He looks and feels like he belongs at the top level of football. And then it's that one. I understand when people talk about age, people talk about experience, lack of caps and so on. Yes, for most people, that is these are all good points. But you do get the odd player here and there where you kind of go, stop talking about that crap and get him in there, because he's good
totally. But we also need, if I may just have the final word on this, because the criticism was levelled at me.
Yeah.
And I don't normally have the final word, so it's not fair. No, I just wanted to also add that something that was pointed out on our YouTube channel when we, because we have the videos up on the shows up on YouTube as well. For those of you just listening to this podcast, they are actually up on YouTube too. But a lot of the comments we got about the conversation we had about midfield a few weeks ago was that you guys need to remember that Jude Bellingham actually started out playing a lot deeper, and he's only been playing further forward for Real Madrid because of different reasons. And we were talking about it in the context of perhaps Bellingham playing a bit deeper instead. And I don't think anyone in their right mind is thinking that Bellingham isn't an amazing option there as well. That was the context of the conversation. But I absolutely accept and agree that the dial's been taken up 3 or 4 notches since the cup final. And that is a massive showpiece game. That's the kind of game that does forge people's reputations and that people will remember for a long time. And so absolutely, as the facts emerge and the things change, the opinions can change. I'm very, very grateful to have him as part of that squad. And if he plays, great. More power to him.
Yeah, indeed. Luke, you got the next question?
I do, yeah. Sorry, I missed my cue. Brendan on Instagram, what's the most important thing you want to see out of these warm-up games next week?
That is a good question. Well, I'd like to see maybe Branthwaite start. We've just talked about him there. At this stage, Southgate will know who are starters and who are contending to start and who are fringe players and all that kind of thing. you don't want to see too many changes in that. It's just suddenly, oh yeah, give everybody 5 minutes on the pitch, and it becomes like, what was the point of all that? But at the same time, it's very unlikely and might not be that wise to start both games with exactly the same team who you think are going to start against Serbia in that opening game. I'd like to see some different combinations in the midfield, because again, the starting midfield, as I've just said, it would be unlikely if that starts and finishes every single game, should England progress in this tournament, which we expect them to do. I'd like to see Eberechi Eze get a few more minutes. We've spoken about him before. I think he could be a really exciting player and a great option off the bench, to hark back to the conversation in the first half. And he's not only is he exciting, but he can produce great moments. He can shoot from range. He can dribble. He's really dynamic. But he can also play in a midfield three. We think about him maybe being pushed up onto the wing. Well, we've got tons of wingers, and maybe he is an option there. But again, if England do go behind, they get an injury or something happens. If you need to reshape things, again, Rice, we know where he's going to play. He's always going to be at the base of midfield, and Rice cannot get injured, for crying out loud. Wrap that man in whatever they make the black box out of in aeroplanes. Have him surrounded by one of them, for crying out loud. He's so crucial.
And the good news is he could tell everyone what happened, how it went wrong.
Exactly.
All the information you need.
Oh dear. So he'll be at the base there, and if you want to have two shuttlers, like England did it in the World Cup in Qatar, which Bellingham was a part of, by the way, he sort of played on the left side of that midfield three. I'd like to see Eze maybe in that position as well. The opposition isn't great in those warm-ups, and again, it's been a long season for all those players, so again, they're not going to go hell for leather. But just to see little shapes, little combinations, who kind of, if you just see what little partnerships are formed, what little understandings are there, so maybe something like that. I wouldn't mind to see maybe Trent Alexander-Arnold lining up in midfield alongside Declan Rice as well.
God, this is a comprehensive answer, Marcus.
Yeah, so there you go. There's a few things.
It's only 2 games, mate.
And I'd like to see 7 changes at half-time. Luke, what do you want to see?
I'm firmly of the belief that these specific friendlies in the build-up the week before a tournament, there's usually 2, are really a time for positive energy and to build confidence and to give players who perhaps you feel like you may need to rely upon minutes if they need them. Take the opportunity to, a player like Eze would be a good example of this, just to make sure if you are planning on taking him, that he feels a part of it, that he's around it. He's played a couple of times for England, but his debut was only 20 minutes against Malta. He's not played an awful lot. So I would say you need to start building confidence, building relationships, and doing really what Southgate's been able to do best, which is to generate a great feeling of squad harmony. Because the reason for that, apart from the obvious, is that I'm long enough in the tooth now to have seen bad performances from England before tournaments and really good ones. And, the responses are always the same. To the bad ones, people will get pissed off or dismiss it, depending on which, flavour of particular analysis they want. And if they're good ones, people will big England up, or they'll just say, don't get carried away. The responses are always exactly the same. There's no point worrying about it at this point. The work is there to be done. The positive energy is there to be developed, and the confidence has to be built, because I think you can't really do anything in life, particularly not a high-level sport, without confidence. So clearly you need to avoid disastrous defeats for that reason. But even if England get a couple of draws, I don't think it really matters. I think what matters is some of the stuff you talked about, giving the players minutes and building the confidence.
Yeah. Cole Palmer to start, maybe?
Say again?
Cole Palmer to start in one of the games?
Cole Palmer should be involved. I mean, Cole Palmer's a player that clearly relishes being involved, and he should be involved. Look at his season. I mean, it's insane. He looks like nothing would ever faze him. But anyway, why don't we wrap up with this question from Marty Carlo? Great name. What attire would you like to see Gareth in for this tournament?
Shorts and t-shirt.
I think t-shirt, socks and trainers,
yeah,
and that's it. You know where I'm going with that.
Socks and sandals.
It worked for Klopp.
And a German marble bag. A little nod to the locals.
And a pouch.
Yeah, that's it. Apparently, Southgate said it'll be short-sleeve knits.
Yeah, you read that in the Daily Mail, didn't you dirty bitch? I saw that as well. I
can't tell you my sources.
You dirty boy.
Dirty boy.
Getting your grubby bits all over the Daily Mail. We're not above it.
We're certainly not. I wouldn't say we're below it either, though. But
No.
I think we've seen the tracksuit work wonders with Sean Dyche this season, and I don't know. I think
It's not the place for a tracksuit at a major tournament, is it? Detrimental.
early rounds and then ramp it up.
No, I think
You
you're
swap
giving
an
the wrong
item
message to your
as
team.
if you progress. If you progress, swap an item every round. So
All right,
shirt
nice.
and tie, tracksuit bottoms.
Like Brian Robson when he was announced at Middlesbrough.
A little bit like that.
Yeah.
And then if you reach semi-finals, final, then you full suit.
It's going to be hot in Germany, right?
Yeah,
So
obviously.
you've got to factor that in. I'm surprised he's going for the polo knit. He went for the polo knit at the World Cup as well.
It was a bit warm, wasn't it?
Yeah,
He
and
likes to stay
obviously
cool.
in 2018 it was the waistcoat, which is what he became known for. I don't think he's been long enough in the job to bring back the waistcoat as a nostalgia play. I think if you'd stuck around till
He's
like
not that type of
2028
guy. He wouldn't do that.
But I'm just saying, if he could get to the 10-year anniversary of the waistcoat, maybe he would. But I think I actually quite like what he dresses in. I think he obviously gets it chosen for him, as they all do at tournaments. Used to be Burton, didn't it? Do you remember back in the day?
I do remember.
Used
What
to
I
dress
think he'll do, I think he'll go, even though that we've got that headline, short sleeve knits, I think that we could see a sort of a t-shirt or something under the blazer and trousers. I'm not talking about company. I'm talking about nobody leaps to mind at the moment. But as if England were to go deep in the tournament, I think shirt and tie would come out for latter rounds.
I'd like him. Do you know what I'd like him to come out in for the final? So England get to the final, right? They're big favourites, and they've got a plum draw in the final, right? So England miraculously play Romania in the final, right? I haven't even checked if they could do that, but say they could.
Slovenia. We'll go with Slovenia. They meet them again.
Yeah, they beat them 6-0 in the group, and they're playing Slovenia again in the final. The team come out. Picture this: Gareth walks out, Man United shirt with Radcliffe 9 on the back. See you in August, lads.
What are you doing? Sir Jim.